Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. What if the people you grew up calling neighbors were actually your siblings, and no one ever told you? This episode of the OGS Ohio Roots podcast features a conversation with Akron Beacon reporter Tawney Beans and the subject of her recent story, Glenn Duncan. Glenn Duncan spent his childhood playing across the railroad tracks in a Cleveland suburb, unaware that the truth about his birth was hiding in plain sight. This is a story of genealogy, secrecy, and how modern science can rewrite everything we think we know about family. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Tawney Beans and Glenn Duncan. Well, Tawney and Glenn, thank you so much for joining me today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. I'm really tickled to talk to you about your story, Glenn, and to hear about how Tawney is going to help you tell it. For our listeners who aren't familiar and haven't read the story yet, would one of you like to kind of run us through the story?
Well, back in 2020, I discovered after our oldest son, Brendan, did, the ancestry and all that, and names that were on he said, "Dad, none of these people do I know." And he said, "I sent Mom and you a kit so that you can do it." Right. When I got it, I got the results, and there were 3 names on mine that I didn't know, didn't recognize the names. And after putting it aside for a few years, believe it or not, I said, you know what, I'm going to check on this. And I contacted what turns out to be a niece that I have.
Okay.
And within just a few hours of trying to reach out and contact her, she responds to me. She says, "My Aunt Deb and know you, Dee Dee and Deb know you, Glenny," which is a name I grew up with because the dad that raised me, his name was Glenn.
Okay.
So after going through a bunch of emails and talking with Dee Dee, we said, is this possible? The reason that it's so strange is that Dee Dee and Deb's mom, Lucille, is my birth mom.
Okay.
And we believe that Lucille, my birth mom, went to the hospital as Irene Duncan to have me so that everything would be legal, and gave me up at birth to my mom that raised me, Irene, and to my dad, Glenn. And nobody told us anything, and we didn't find out till 2020.
Huh.
My mom.
Yep. Now, as I understand from what I've read, from what Tawney's shared with me, I mean, you were basically neighbors, correct?
We lived in an old neighborhood called Jackass Hill in Cleveland. And it's an area where there was a bridge that covered a railroad track that I lived on one side and they lived on the other side, literally less than 1/10 of a mile apart. And if I wasn't at their house playing, they were at our house playing over on the other side of the bridge. And there was a store in between by the bridge that we used to go and buy candy and all that kind of stuff. But literally, till I was in fifth grade, we had to move because our house was going to be taken by an extension of 77 going into Cleveland. And they built a ramp going over to East 55th Street.
Okay. So you basically grew up, close to your birth mom and your adopted mom.
Right.
Tawney, how did you stumble across this story?
This is, in my opinion, the best part.
Another story.
Yeah. We share the same dentist.
Okay.
So I went in for a cleaning, and I love my dentist, Dr. Flacco. She's in Cuyahoga Falls. And she's been my dentist since I had teeth, and she was my dad's dentist and everything. And so she actually, I said hi and everything. And then I don't know how, maybe it was a month or two later, she called me and was like, I have a story for you. Cause she had, Glenn had came in and kind of told, his story to her. And she was like, oh, I know someone who can like write about this and like put this onto paper. So she connected us. It was really, really hilarious.
Yeah. Over the years, people have said that I should find somebody to write the story.
Right.
And it's too crazy. There's so many things that are just mind boggling.
Yeah.
The discovery of my dad, the other name on the list of names is a cousin that I have that lives over outside of Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh, or outside of Pittsburgh. And I called Amy and I told her what was going on. And she said, well, it wouldn't have been my dad. You'd be brothers, and it wouldn't be this other brother who I have a cousin that lives in Arkansas. She says, the only one I can think of is Claire Jameson. And his daughters live down in South Carolina. And I got the number for Kim, the younger of the two sisters. And I asked her, would you be willing to take the DNA test? And I said, if you find the results, call me or text me or whatever, let me know. And Paula and I, my wife, we were on our way down to visit a cousin of hers in Tennessee. And Kim called and she says, well, you wanted me to call you, brother. And in our conversations, I asked her, I says, in South Carolina, where do you live in South Carolina? And she says, Duncan, South Carolina.
Huh.
That's one of the first, funny things is that, the last name Duncan,
all connected.
Yeah. And then after a few conversations with her, telling her, that the dad that ended up marrying my birth mom, after an older brother I have who mom was a single mom, then me getting pregnant and, giving me away, there were 8 more siblings that I have. And, she says, what was the dad's name? I said, Sebastian. And I said, why? And she says, I have a cat named Sebastian.
And Abraham Lincoln has a secretary named Kennedy. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So
that's crazy.
Story has just been one crazy ride. And I was so thankful that, Tawney was willing to do this for me and put it to, the story.
Yeah. So Tawney, talk to me a little bit about that, because obviously you can't just take Glenn's word for it. So obviously you've been looking at documentation and historical records to kind of verify that. How's that process gone?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to his sister on both like maternal and paternal, and like they helped verify things, and also your cousin Linda
down in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was the one who ultimately revealed to him and just told him you are adopted, because no one has ever said anything to him, and she was kind of sworn to secrecy.
Right. Okay. She was told that mom got a baby.
Okay.
Had a baby or anything like that. And there's a picture that I couldn't find of my mom in a wedding in July, and she's flat as a board. There's no way she was 9 months pregnant in that picture. Right. Yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then another, interesting thing was his birth certificate also shows that, I mean, there's multiple things on there that something's off. Like the section that has, living children, there's a 1 with that time, but Irene,
brother Danny,
right, didn't have, so it couldn't have been her. And then but it made sense with Lucille, his biological mom, because she did have a child living at that time. Her maiden name was spelled.
My mom's maiden name, Irene Jakubowski, Jakubowski, and on the birth certificate it's Jacobs.
Yeah, and then
we signed Duncan, it's continuation where the DUNCAN go together. Mom would never have broken it, and it's broken on the birth certificate. So we know that something as simple as that. My wife Paula was the one that brought up some of those discrepancies, but I didn't know why,
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think too much about your own birth certificate. I feel like a lot of the time.
Right.
And your sister, Denise, Dee Dee, she verified, like she told me as soon as she saw your birth certificate,
Yep.
she was like, do you have evidence like of what your mom's handwriting looks like? Cause she's like, this looks like my mom. Like, cause his mom had really distinctive handwriting, and she identified it right away as it being like mom's handwriting.
Right.
So there's tons of other little things.
Hi, everyone. Noel Poirier here, Executive Director of the Ohio Genealogical Society and your host for the Ohio Roots podcast. Did you know you can help preserve the past and empower the future? Your donation to the Ohio Genealogical Society helps protect vital family history records and supports research for generations to come. Visit www.ogs.org/donate and give today. Thank you so much for your support. Get ready for the 2025 OGS Annual Conference coming to Sharonville, Ohio, April 29th through May 2nd, 2026. Join genealogists and family historians from across the country for 4 days of inspiring sessions, expert speakers, research tools, and community connections. Don't miss your chance to discover new stories and strengthen your family history skills. Registration opens November 28th, so be sure to register and be part of Ohio's premier genealogy event. So, Glenn, let me ask you, what was the family dynamic at the time of your birth that would have your mother, your biological mother, giving up a child?
My mom, I explained, she was a single mom already once. She grew up in the Newton Falls area and worked at a diner. And we think that Glenn and Sebastian, they both worked for a same company driving trucks and stuff.
Okay.
And it's also where we believe that birth mom, met my dad, Claire. But we don't know the transition. And that is one of the things we're not sure how Lucille ended up moving to the Cleveland area, becoming friends with Irene.
Right.
And Mom Irene had a few miscarriages. The latest one was like November 28th of 51, and I was born in July of 52.
Yeah.
So the math is kind of gray there, that it probably wasn't my mom, Irene.
Yeah.
And that she had the miscarriage and they were both pregnant at the same time. It was just a perfect thing to say, hey, you want a child, and I'm getting together with Sebastian, and, they made this pact or whatever, this agreement. Back then, they don't check for as much.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough story. I mean, I think about because we all look back on our childhood and we have these memories of our childhood as being a certain way, right? Yeah. How did learning all of this affect the way you look back at your childhood now?
Well, I wouldn't change anything other than the fact that why did we take so long to find out the truth? Because I moved from that area when I was in 5th grade, so 10 years old. I grew up with, my siblings for 10 years.
Right.
And I make a joke of it with my sister Dee Dee. And I said, do you think, Dee Dee, if I would have stayed in that neighborhood and we started dating, that they might have told us the story? And we laughed together,
Yeah.
And another story, when we released this, the family always wants to get together if there's any news health-wise or something life-changing.
Right.
And we had a little get-together at the old Dowse house where Dee Dee lives now. But the house that they grew up in is still there, right? And there's bridge remnants right across the street.
Wow.
The bridge that we crossed over. And they got together and explained how through the DNA that they found this information out, and they said, we found out that we have another brother. And my older brother, Danny, just as plain and as clearly as possible, says, it's Glenn Duncan, isn't it? He just had that feeling because we spent so much time together,
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, it is. And again, it's a different time. So you have to kind of wrap your head in that.
Sure.
It's a lot easier for what happened to happen, I imagine, at that time.
Right.
I know we talk in genealogical terms about, how documents cannot always be as accurate as you'd like them to be, and people's memories are not as accurate as you'd like them to be. So I could see how it happens. It's just it's just kind of fascinating. Was there someone who helped you to kind of navigate kind of the paper trail and the DNA? Because I mean that's a lot to process.
I do have a girl from high school that I knew kind of went into this direction. I'm sorry, her name is Dottie Keller. Married name, that's her maiden name. But that's who I contacted first. And I have a lot of information that my cousin Kathy Thomas, that we talked and talked and talked, and said, what the heck's going on? And then it wasn't until, I got in touch with Kim and with Amy that we put the pieces kind of together. We wish we knew more about the transition back and forth,
Sure.
there in Cleveland. But Sebastian used to love country music, and Lucille and my dad, Glenn, played country western music on Friday and Saturday nights. So that friendship, even after Sebastian passed away, Lucille built a house literally a few miles down the road where I grew up after we moved in Oakwood Village. And when I got old enough to drive, my mom, Irene, would say, "Hey, why don't you drive me down and we go visit, Lucille?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Mom, I haven't seen her in years and all this and that. But it got to be a regular thing to go visit Lucille. Yeah.
And this can be for either of you to answer, because I know, Tawney, you obviously you've talked to people related to the story, and Glenn, you obviously have as well. Did you encounter any resistance from anybody to talking about this or to accepting the facts of this case?
Not at all.
Oh, really? Didn't you have your cousin, or was it an aunt that you had? She's passed now.
I think yeah. Aunt June is Lucille's sister.
Okay.
I went with two of my brothers, and we went to visit Aunt June. And when they told her, that we found out that, this is a new brother and all that, and she had asked me, "Well, when did you say you were born?" And I said, "I was born in July." "Why?" And she says, "Because Sebastian and Lucille got married in May." Mm. And I made the statement. I says, "Aunt June, if that is true, then Mom was pregnant with me at the time when they got married." Mm-hmm. But the agreement was already made between Irene and Lucille to give me up. We think that, it's all speculation, but that's the pieces that kind of fit, because Sister Dee Dee and Deb, who is deceased now, but they both said that had Sebastian known earlier, that he probably wouldn't have wanted to give up any.
Right. Sure.
As a result, had 8 more. So.
And how does that make you feel, Glenn? I mean, the fact that whole life could have been different.
I went from having a sister who was not biological, for all my life, and then finding out that I have, the 9 others, and the 3 from Dad's side of the family.
Yeah. Tawney, there's a lot of stories online nowadays or in the media about DNA and how it's used for a variety of, reasons. One of, criminal crime solving and other things. What made Glenn's story kind of jump out to you as unique and worth the time investigating?
I mean, the fact that he grew up and had no idea that his siblings were he played with his siblings. He had no idea. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know either. There was just a level, once you got to the next generation, there was just no one knew. Realistically, I mean, maybe some of the cousins, but the siblings involved had no clue at all, which is really interesting. And I mean, I'm also adopted. So that's why I was also interested.
Okay. Yeah.
So it also, we're connected that way. I was adopted and everything. So I didn't have quite as crazy story. I don't have any other, I didn't my siblings growing up. And
that of.
Yes, that I know of.
Exactly.
But so I think it was just it wasn't just the, finding some new parentage or something like that. because it was, I mean, a lot of people have been finding that out with DNA. It was
Sure.
specifics around, Lucille, like, probably, I mean, it seems very likely that she impersonated herself going to the hospital or impersonated Irene going to the hospital because of all these inconsistencies with the birth certificate. Right. And then there's just so much stuff that was hidden now has come to light. And then it's, finding out you have like 12 half siblings. It's quite a shock. So I feel like it's something that readers would really, really find interesting and want to know more about.
Yeah, at first we were worried that I was going to be one of those Hicks babies.
Okay.
And, my wife and I, we, searched and looked up and sent to the state to see if I was adopted or send me my money back, and said, nope, there's no record of any adoption. So the theory of being given up and having the birth certificate go along with me is the one that we all found that's probably the likelihood,
Yeah. And Tawney, as you write the story, as you research it, as you compose it, were there ethical or privacy concerns that you had? I mean, that's one of the challenges that comes up with DNA in general, right? Is you learn DNA about something and you learn something about people who aren't really you may have no connection with, and they may not want to have a connection with you for whatever reason. Were there concerns that came up in the process of researching and writing?
Yeah, honestly, mostly because this has been 5 years of Glenn doing this. Like everyone that I spoke to is very happy to speak with me. Good. And, I did not have any issue, and they all were more than happy to talk to me. Yeah. So in that realm, I didn't have any real concerns. I mean, there's no one I spoke with specifically that is living that has any sort, that I think would have any concern about the story at all. But mostly because it's still his story. I mean, like in this sense. So, but yeah, not really anything there. I think the hardest thing was trying to figure out how to refer to everyone.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping it all in my head as we talk.
We figured that out, but I think at first we were like, how do we do this? Because there's power in words, and so saying you're adopted, which is how I've been referring to it for my own sanity, when speaking to you or speaking to my editor and whatnot, is like, well, when you put that on paper in a story, there are legal implications of being adopted. There's legal implications of surrogacy, especially in the modern age. Sure. So I was like, we figured out how to make it so, which is really, we just use everyone's like first name and explain their relation. And that was the most clear way to make sure that it was, everyone was identifiable.
And I had an aunt that kept bugging my mom. I understand. You need to tell him. You need to tell him he deserves to know what happened and all this and that. And there's a few cousins that had heard their mom and, sisters talking and just kind of, they need to tell Glennie. They need to tell him. Yeah. And she never did. She went to her deathbed, never said a word, never said anything. And like I said, that's the hardest part. Yeah. One regret that I have is the time we've missed being together, as a family, and we're making up for it.
Well, that was kind of one of my next questions is what's it been like kind of reconnecting with all of these people with the new relationship, knowing the new relationship?
Yeah, no, it's been great. Finally got to meet my other sister, Brenda, that lives down in South Carolina, not in Duncan, but, I got to meet her for the first time last year, where Kim, when we found out the news back in 2021, 22, she came over to the beach house that we go to in North Carolina. And as soon as we pulled in, our daughter, Courtney, was looking out over the balcony, and she got out of the car and she goes, "Oh my God, Dad, she's got to be your sister." That kind of, and the kids have all been, very supportive. And I can't, like I said, the only regret that we all had is that we missed a lot of years in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a question, Glenn, that you'd want to ask Lucille or Irene?
Why?
Okay.
I need you to let me know. I would have happily gone more to go see Mom, instead of, come on, take me over there, please.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a driver's license now. Come on.
Yeah. That must have been very difficult for your birth mom.
And I always think when I went there and I hugged her, was that hug that much more special than it would have been, Yeah, I think about that all the time.
Did Tawney, since you obviously had to do some work on DNA testing in general for their story, did Glenn's case illustrate kind of any of the power and kind of limitations of what DNA can do for us?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was very, my photographer actually helped me because he has looked into his history. So he kind of was showing me the ropes and stuff like that, on his side. And he actually gave me a really good lesson, funny enough, in the, what you can get out of it, but there are limitations, and sometimes the pitfalls of, because even Glenn, he's done so much work to piece this all together, but there's always questions. Like there's some things that unfortunately, like I wish I could solve it for Glenn, but there's some that are just not going to be answered. And it can give you some answers, but it can also lead to a ton more, as he has learned. And it can create some frustration, it just depends. I feel like it's really important to be aware of what you could be getting into when you want to take one of these tests, because who knows what you're going to find out.
I have, over the years of knowing, talked to people, that know the story, and, they said, I have a relative that I found out is related to me, and I don't want to be any part of their life, and we had, people, again, that were given up as adopted, and, they wanted to try to reach out with their mom and dad, and to have somebody say, no, I don't want any part of you. That's got to be really tough.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story. And like I said, it's a whirlwind in my mind as we've talked about it. But, Glenn and Tawney, I really want to thank you for coming on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast to talk about it. And I hope everybody gets a chance to read the story. Tawney, do you want to tell us when the story is going to be or is available?
Yeah, it will publish online on January the 8th. So it will be on the Akron Beacon Journal website that day, and then should go in print the following Sunday on the 12th.
Right. Well, Glenn, Tawney, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your time. It's a great story. I look forward to reading the article when it comes out.
No problem.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, and maybe I need to come down there and
please do. Please do. Well, we welcome you with open arms.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Merry Christmas to you too. Glenn Duncan's story reminds us that family history isn't always written in ledgers or certificates. It lives in our memories and our secrets and in our DNA. Thanks to the careful reporting of Tawney Beans, Glenn Duncan's curiosity, and the tools of modern genealogy, a truth buried for decades came to light. If this episode made you reflect on your own family story, you're certainly not alone. As always, thank you for listening to the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please, leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Will Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.